All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's What's New with ChromeOS webinar. I'm Drea Alfonso, one of our program managers here on our Google for Education team. And here I am joined by Jason Wong, one of our product managers all the way from London on our Chromebooks for Education team. So before we get started, I am going to be presenting my screen and then we will dive right into it. So just give me 1 second here. All right, and as I mentioned, before we dive into it, we'll just do a quick round of introductions, who Jason and I are, and then we'll dive deep into the agenda. Before we get into that, I wanted to also cover some housekeeping tips here. So for those that are on the webinar today, again, thank you for joining us, and want to make sure that you have a chance to sign in. And the sign-in form is in the YouTube description of the video that you're currently in. So make sure that you have a chance to sign in there so we can make sure that we follow up with any resources and information that we cover throughout the day here. And also for any questions that you have as we're going through the information, questions for Jason and I, here is the short link here. We'll just keep this up for a few minutes. So again, any questions that you have throughout the webinar, please pop those questions in here. And as we get to the end of the webinar, we'll be able to address those at the end. And again, the sign-in form is in the description of the YouTube video. And for any questions that you have throughout the day, that's also in the YouTube description. But here we've left the short link here for you as well. All right, so as I mentioned, my name is Drea Alfonso, and I'm a program manager on our Google for Education team. And in my role, I work with districts across the country in various states. And my job is to really ensure that districts are fully supported when it comes to implementing Google tools in the classroom, whether that's devices, G Suite for Education, or even more insights into some of our computer science programs. Again, being here as a resource for school districts when it comes to embarking on any Google tools initiatives that are happening in the classroom. And then Jason, again, one of our product managers on our Chromebooks for Education team. And as we kick it off to him later in the webinar, I'll let him kind of do a little bit deeper dive into the great work that he does on our team and in education as well. So for today's topics, wanted to cover a few things. Number one is just giving a Chromebook background, a brief overview into the devices that we provide for education. Because as we do know, there's going to be folks on the webinar that kind of cross the spectrum of having a lot of experience with Chromebooks to very little. So we want to make sure that we're touching everyone here today. Then we'll dive a little bit into how we think about hardware, especially in education. And then Jason will give a review of the devices that we have lined up for this year, what's coming up for next year. And then we'll talk a little bit more about Android apps running on Chrome and how you can embark on the beta program, the pilot program that we have currently available today. And then we will address the questions that you guys have popped into the short link here from the webinar. And again, the question form is in the YouTube description as well. All right, so as I mentioned, again, a lot of districts come with varied experience with using Chromebooks. So we wanted to kind of cover briefly the key differentiators when it comes to the devices that we provide for the classroom. So when we created a Chromebook, the idea is that we wanted to make sure that it was simple, very easy to use, because we know in the classroom, we want to make sure that we are saving valuable time and making sure that the technology is not getting in the way. We wanted to make sure that it was affordable, very cost effective. Again, that's a big point to hit in education. And we also wanted to make sure, most importantly, that it was secure. So all the data is encrypted at rest on the device. And even when the device is with others, it's very secure as well too. And when we're Speaking of other users, we also wanted to ensure that shareability. Shareability is definitely a key and a huge win in education as well too. So all the bookmarks, your information, your experience in the browser is all brought to you on any device. So again, whether you log in with your Chromebook at home, at school, what have you, all of the information is there and available. And this makes it very easy in the classroom. Again, students can pick up any device, whether they're switching classrooms, and get straight to work. And when we first started with Chromebooks, we might have had maybe a handful of different form factors to choose from. But now today, Chromebooks come in dozens of all sizes and shapes as well. And last year, we introduced the convertible model with a 360 hinge. So you can use Chromebooks in a tablet mode or even a hinge mode, again, giving more of that variety as well. And they also come in different screen sizes. There's desktops with monitors, Chrome bases, and of course we have the Chromebit as well too. And as I mentioned, Jason will talk a little bit more deeper into the newer devices that we've launched this year. And as I mentioned, Chromebooks they've definitely hit a lot of momentum and traction within education. And chances are there's probably a district near you that is using them. And whether it's a few carts here or there or full one-to-one deployments, these are just a few examples of some of the larger initiatives we've seen across the country. But aside from the device itself, our team is really focused on ways that we can make Chromebooks more effective for learning, and rather than just focusing on a few product features here and there. So one of the things that we've been thinking about, again, is how can technology support various learning principles? Because we do know that it's not about just the technology or technology for technology's sake. So we started to identify what we think learning tools or the learning environment looks like and how we can build devices to support those principles. So I'll just touch very briefly on 4 of those principles that we've identified. The first principle is personalized and measured. So we know that students have diverse needs of styles, and we wanted to ensure that the technology is helping to cater to each student, to each individual. We also wanted to make sure that the technology allows a way to measure that progress, even though students are learning in different ways, they're working on different projects. Again, wanted to make sure that the technology is there to measure their personalized learning as well. And when it comes to learning is a very collaborative experience and process, and it should be extremely diverse. There should be different modalities, different ideas, and different perspectives that students are learning from, a global perspective as well too. So again, thinking about how does the technology make this collaborative and diverse learning experience a reality. And then when we think about learning principles, we also focus on the idea of something that's project-based and self-managed. We wanted to think about how technology can help students direct their own learning and help them pursue areas that they're curious about. And this is something that will help them not only in the classroom, but beyond the classroom, and as they embark on future careers as well. And this is all about, again, giving students the tools to help navigate their lifelong learning as well. And lastly, we wanted to think about how can we help learning be conceptual and experiential. So students shouldn't just be learning about the facts. For example, we always kind of think about the example of state capitals. You know, not just making students memorize state capitals, but diving deeper into the history. Why was it the capital? What does it look like today? And we see that with this type of learning, students are more connected to their work when they're solving real life problems that directly impact their communities. So with that being said, I'd like to kick it off to Jason. This year we announced a number of new features to Chromebooks, and a lot of that was driven by feedback from school leaders across the globe. So again, would love to kick it off to Jason to tell us a little bit more about his role as product manager on Chromebooks for Education, and then let us in on what we can expect for devices this year and even next year. So I will hop out of my screen, and Jason, I'll kick it off to you.
All right, so let me just present. All right, hopefully you guys can all see that. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jason. Thank you very much, Daria. So I'm a product manager, as Ray said, on the Chromebook for Education team. I've been at Google close to 10 years. It'll be 10 years in July. And I've been on the Chromebook team for about 3 to 4 years. And I spend a lot of my time working with our sort of OEM partners who make the hardware to try and make sure that we have sort of the right devices in the market. And I want to make sure that we get Chromebooks in the hands of as many educators and students as we can, both in the US, but also internationally, where I've been spending a lot of my time over the last sort of 18 months or so. Before I go into the device portfolio for what's new with Chromebooks this year in 2017, and it's been a very busy year, I wanted to just take a little bit of a step back because Chromebooks are very different. And some of the great things that's kind of speed, simplicity, security story, and shareability story that Dre mentioned up front, they don't happen by accident. We actually spend a lot of time on the product team thinking very hard about how we deliver this, and there's a lot of things there underlying sort of product stuff in there that kind of means that the speed, simplicity, security is possible. So I just wanted to touch on a couple of these things before going on to the portfolio side. So one of these things is how Google and allow our OEMs to actually build ChromeOS devices. We don't allow anyone to build them. Is number one. As Google, we have to approve sort of every single device. And secondly, it goes a little bit further than that. Not only that we have to approve the device, we actually have to have our OEMs adhere to a very long list of requirements, and these requirements are extremely detailed. To like everything from like the placement of the touchpad to like how far the keys can travel on the keyboard to specific components. It actually goes even further than that again. We actually specify, or we have to make sure that the components used inside the Chromebooks are actually meet certain these requirements, and we actually test them, and that we have each of these components inside the Chromebooks has to meet a certain bar before we allow it. And you may ask, why does Google do that? And one of the key reasons is that we want to make sure that the OS and the hardware work together very seamlessly and they're optimized. So by having a list of components and requirements, it allows us to really get that experience really optimized, so that the OS runs really smoothly on very kind of what you traditionally would call relatively light and low-powered hardware. The second thing it allows us to do is to make sure that our updates are very, very seamless. Now, Chromebooks update every 6 weeks. We push out an update, and we can pretty much guarantee they will work across every single Chromebook because we know all the components that are inside. For those of you who have Chromebooks already and know about this update process every 6 weeks, we actually make it very, very transparent, so very, very kind of seamless for the user. All the user sees is actually a kind of restart mechanism, and they restart the computer, and that's what happens. And that's the update completed. We actually, because the OS that we have is so lightweight, we actually have 2 copies of the OS on each device. And what actually happens is that when the update comes in, we update the dormant version. And then when the update's done, we tell the user to restart and switch the active version of the OS to the dormant, and the dormant one, which is the updated one, to the active. So these are just a couple of examples of some of the things, deep technical things that we do on Chrome to make sure that the end user has a really, really good experience on that side. Anyway, enough of that. So 2017, as I mentioned, was a very, very busy year. I have on this slide the kind of what I call the student portfolio in terms of the student devices that are in the portfolio of Chromebooks available today. And you'll see marked in blue all the ones that were sort of new for 2017, and there's a good over half of the devices are brand new. And I just want to walk you through kind of how I think about this portfolio and how I sort of think through the different classes of devices. So the first one's at that sort of on the bottom row here, your standard education sort of clamshell. And these are rugged, they're affordable. All the OEMs have seen the success of Chromebooks in the education space and have all this year brought out very rugged designs, designed to withstand the stresses and strains in the classroom, as well as being thrown in a bag and sort of bounced around all over the place. So the four new ones in this category this year are, so Lenovo have refreshed the N22 and the N23. Acer brought out a very rugged version of their 11-inch clamshell. I think they're claiming, I think, 90 centimeters in terms of drop test. They have a spill-proof keyboard. Dell has refreshed a very popular Chromebook, and HP have brought out one as well. And I think all these devices have touch options available to them as well. These are sort of very affordable, in and around sort of the $199 mark. Better pricing, of course, with sort of tender and mid pricing. And then the next category in the clamshell space, at least, I call sort of the step up. You can pay a little bit more money, and you can get either a larger screen. So, for example, the Lenovo N42. You can pay for more performance, so you can get a better processor on there. So, for example, the Acer is very popular Acer C740 down there. Or you can pay for more ruggedness. So the Lenovo 11E ThinkPad is kind of regarded as the kind of the benchmark in terms of ruggedization, and so that has also got the sort of latest Intel Apollo Lake processor in there as well. And the other new device in this category to call out this year is the new Dell Chromebook 13, which is much more affordable than the previous version and designed for schools, with schools in mind, with the activity light on the front, and that also has a Intel Core processor. I think that has a Skylake-based one there. So if you're interested in some of these, then these are some great devices. Now, aside from the clamshell side, what's really exciting about sort of Chrome devices this year has been the introduction of sort of convertible devices. As Dre mentioned, we had last year introduced a little bit more in the mainstream market the idea of the convertible Chromebook, the Acer R11, or I think some of you know as the C738T. And also the Asus model into the consumer space, and many schools have bought them and used them in schools. This year, the OEMs have brought in sort of more rugged versions of the convertibles, and I split these up into two categories. So this first one is your sort of pretty standard convertible. Lenovo have introduced a new Chromebook in the sort of N series, the N23 Yoga, which is a fantastic product based on MediaTek processor, which is very powerful and gets good performance benchmarks. Dell have introduced a convertible for the first time in the 11-inch model, and Lenovo have refreshed their already they already had one in the lineup, 11E Yoga, in their ThinkPad lineup as well, using the latest Apollo Lake. However, what's really exciting this year for 2017 are these, what we're terming sort of the next generation EDU convertible, because this really sort of demonstrates the versatility of Chrome and what you can do in the classroom. So these three devices, the Acer Chromebook 11 Spin, the HP Chromebook X360 11 Education Edition, and they use Chromebook Flip. They represent where we see the Chromebook category sort of really expanding into. So they're all convertible. They all have touch. They also have three options for three key features, which we feel are important. The first is Stylus. All these devices have Stylus options. As we see, we see Stylus as being important because aside from just having sort of text and keyboard input, that there are some subjects where that becomes more of a hindrance than a help. So, for example, in math is a classic example, or art, or those kind of things. So we added sort of Stylus to the ChromeOS kind of list of features. But we did it in a sort of very considered way. There are, just not to go too techy for a moment, but there are various, a couple of different sort of technologies out there for styluses. And we chose one where instead of having the technology in the pen, the technology was actually on the device and on the screen. And this allows for a few things. This allows for the pen, the stylus part, to be extremely light. It's almost like a number 2 pencil. It means because there's no battery in there, it means that you can take any of these styluses and work across any of these stylus-enabled Chromebooks. You don't need to charge it. You don't. The team, when they were thinking about this, had that vision of that pencil pot in the classroom, and so you can sort of pick up any pen and use it on any any sort of stylus-enabled Chromebook. And the beauty of it is it means that the actual pens, which are more likely to be lost, get lost easier. It means that they're much more affordable for replacements. So we are seeing quite a good lots of interest in this feature, and that we're starting to see some developers and apps sort of being developed with this in mind. So a great one to call out is an extension called Equatio from, I think, a company called TextHelp. They have a way of getting sort of math equations into Google Forms and Google Docs. So if you guys haven't checked it out, I recommend you check that out there. The second is what we're calling the world-facing camera, which is a camera on the keyboard side. One of the key pieces of feedback we heard from schools who bought the Acer R11 and the Flip was that when they wanted to use a Chromebook creatively and capture media, would be that photos or videos, it was quite clunky when the camera was on the same side as the screen. So we introduced a 5 megapixel camera on the keyboard side, and that in so direct response to that, and the feedback from so far from schools has been that's been very, very positive. Lastly, this one's not an optional feature, but is on all these next generation Chromebooks and a couple more as well, is standardized charging in essence with USB Type-C. One of the beauties of the development model that we have on Chrome is that because we have that list of requirements, we can ensure OEMs have certain hardware features. So one of those has been the hardware-backed security that the encryption at rest and everything relies on. But going forward, we are going to standardize charging on Chromebooks on USB Type-C. So for many school districts that have fleets of devices from multiple different manufacturers and ages, you can standardize on one Type-C charger. I can imagine sort of 2, 3, 4 years down the line, as this becomes more and more standard, then maybe you don't need to buy the charger actually with the device because you already have some from previous deployments. So we feel that this is a great thing, and we are sort of leading the way in trying to push the industry towards this. So that was a whistle-stop tour on the sort of current portfolio of Chrome devices, and you can see we have now a range of not just the clamshell devices all the way up to some great convertible devices as well. The other thing we announced that some of you may have missed earlier this year is that at BET we mentioned that we are bringing Chrome OS and Chromebooks into other form factors, and that includes detachables and tablets. So we are working on this right now. Nothing coming this year. We look for announcement sort of 2018. But imagine the best of Chrome, multi-user, regular updates, the simplicity, that security model, full-fledged browser, but in a tablet form factor. So Excited to hear sort of comments and questions, hopefully afterwards, from folks in terms of whether you guys will use this. We see a couple of use cases for this, so we're very excited to see that come, and a little something to whet your appetite. So that was the review of the portfolio, and now I'll hand back to Drea to talk a little bit about this early beta feature on Android on ChromeOS. All right.
All right. Thanks, Jason, for that overview and a look into what we can expect for devices this year and next year with the exciting ChromeOS tablet. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Android apps coming to Chromebooks, what that looks like, and how you can kind of think about going about beta testing and also piloting as well, too. All right. So last year, as I mentioned, we announced the new project of bringing Android apps to Chrome devices. And as I'm presenting this, again, for any questions that you guys have on the webinar today on the Hangout, feel free to visit that short link here and pop your questions in there. So when it comes to the rollout of Android apps on Chromebooks for education, it's now open to EDU, but it's something that's currently in beta. So at this point, we're really excited to open it up and learn from teachers, learn from school leaders how they're using these apps in the classroom and what that experience is like to really help us get it ready for full launch. There are 4 devices available today with Android apps, and those are the Acer Chromebook, R11, the Asus Flip, the Google Pixel, and also the Samsung Chromebook Plus. And there are also 4 additional devices that will be ready for back to school, and those are the 4 that you see here. The Acer Chromebook Spin 11, the Asus Flip, the HP Chromebook 11, and also the Lenovo Chromebook Yoga as well. And we'll also be opening up to other models here. So if you have your hands on any of these devices, then the beta program is something that would interest you. So when it comes to using the beta, it's really about folks that enjoy the beta experience. Again, it's something where again, because it's in pilot, some of the apps will work, some of the apps might not work, but it's great to get that feedback from teachers, from those that are using it day in, day out. So really, we can really understand what this needs to look like by the time it's ready to go full launch. So if you have a Gmail account, a personal Gmail account, and you have one of those 4 devices, you can log in with your personal account and you automatically get access to the Play Store. And from there, you can really start playing around with the apps. So really think about this as a time where you can really assess what are the different apps, what is the content that teachers are using in the classroom today, and really determine, is this available in the Play Store? What is the experience like? Again, so really kind of thinking about almost assessing what's the content that's being used across the district and what that's going to look like in the Android apps Chromebook experience. As mentioned, with the early beta, you get early access to a lot of the cool things that we're doing, but again, there will be some challenges that might happen. But again, the first way to engage with the early beta with your Gmail account, any of the 4 supported devices that we shared, log in, load up the Play Store, and again, get your hands on some Android apps on Chromebooks. And then once you've had a chance to do that, in terms of testing it and playing around with it on your personal device, you can also use it on your EDU domain. But we recommend that you create a test domain for this, something that's going to affect specific OUs. So you might want to take a couple of your IT folks, get them going, but again, be very careful in terms of going full production, because again, this is still all in beta. So once you've had a chance to identify some key users, then think about doing it with a small pilot with maybe some of your teacher leaders, a small classroom pilot. Again, a class set of the supported devices that we talked about. And do a small pilot. Kind of think about, again, what's the experience for teachers, but also for students, and really keep an eye on how these devices behave as well, too. Again, that feedback is going to be critical for us as we get ready for full launch. And as we support more devices, you'll be really able to go with that. And you can see from here which apps work, which don't work so nicely. And again, that's great feedback that we can bring directly back to our developers and have a chance to really focus on the applications as well. What's great is that, again, with Android app world opening up on Chromebooks, you just have a resource of different content that can be used. And our friends at Adobe are also designing specific Android apps to run on Chromebooks. And we also have our Science Journal and Google Classroom on mobile that will support this as well, too. And what's key here is that the team really needs your feedback in terms of how can we make sure that this is ready to go, that it's effective, and it's easy to use in the classroom. So for those that are not timid by the beta experience, definitely recommend that you go in there, do some beta testing, give us, our team, the feedback. So again, we can make sure that this is ready to launch and it's ready to go. One of the key things that I did want to talk about is the management features the management features of using Android apps on Chromebooks. As the management is today, everything is blacklisted. So when you turn it on in your test domain, there'll be no apps available, and you'll have to whitelist every app that you want to use. And it's a process that's identical to the Chrome Web Store setup today, rather than it'll just be Android apps that will be whitelisted instead of the Chrome apps. All right, so I'm going to hop into our Q&A doc to see what questions we've had from the group. But again, we kind of covered a lot today. We talked about a brief background into Chromebooks for education. We dived into what's coming up for 2017, what we can expect in 2018, hopefully with the ChromeOS tablet, and also talk more about how you can go ahead and start beta testing this experience as well. Because again, as we mentioned, your feedback is critical as we continue to build this and get it ready for launch as well. So I will start to go into our Q&A doc. And if there's any questions that you have as well, feel free to pop those into the live chat as well. So Jason, I'm going to...
Let me...
Yep.
Whilst you're doing that, let me... there have been a few questions already from my section, which I'll start answering on. So I think there was one question around when the sort of new next-gen convertibles will be available very soon. End of May, we're hoping. There has been a delay. It's been a bit sort of it's been a bit longer than we would have liked. It's a new platform, so there will be by the end of May on that one. There was a question about Type-C charging. Just to clarify, these are still AC chargers, but they just have a Type-C input into the there's still chargers, so 45-watt type chargers, but the beauty is, instead of trying to match up which charger goes to which device, you can just take a standard input into the actual device. So it doesn't matter which charger with which device, it will still work and should simplify carts and all the rest of it. So that's on Type-C. There was a question around Android apps on non-touch enabled sort of Chromebooks. Yes, although as this person probably knows, that Android apps are all built with touch first. There is something in the actual Android framework called fake touch. So using the touchpad, you can actually work some of these apps using sort of your traditional mouse and click. Clearly, these apps may not be as optimized for that type of input and experience. So, but it is possible to use touchpad for that. But we are working with developers and we have a lot of documentation for developers to say, hey, you can't. There are these additional input methods. You should optimize your apps to make sure that experience is a bit better. Okay. Okay. Another question around ChromeOS tablet. So yes, we are targeting Android apps to make sure they run on that. It makes sense for a tablet to run Android apps. In terms of, there's actually quite a few questions on this. In terms of form factors, we are exploring them now, both small, in terms of what people would think that they would like on that one. The pricing window, yes, we do recognize that affordability is very important for schools. So we will be that's something we will be sort of making sure we manage. And also in terms of the manageability, absolutely. We also recognize that some of the power of Chromebooks is not the actual devices, it's how easy these devices are to manage by the admin console, and so that they will be manageable through the same great experience that you experience on Chrome today.
And one of the questions that pops up in terms of Android apps on Chromebooks, I know we mentioned kind of still being in beta with that. Is there a go live launch date for that, or is that?
So what you had on the slide earlier, we are saying that those kind of 4 devices will say by back to school. We are working on sort of bringing sort of the rest of the devices sort of after that date. However, there's sort of 2 sides to this equation. There's one which is the devices. The actual device will support sort of Android apps running. But there's also the management side, management features, and that side of things, which we are building and go on. And on both sides, we want to make sure that we get the experience right, and before we take it out of beta and for general availability. So we know there are things in the management side that need working on. So things like being able to click on multiple apps and set the permissions via bulk, some more controls on the admin side, and some of those things which we're actively working on. But some of those reasons why we're still keeping it in beta for now.
Got it. And then we mentioned the ChromeOS tablets. What would be the difference between the Android tablets and the ChromeOS tablets? I know we did have Android tablets at one point.
Correct. I think the key difference is that it will be running sort of ChromeOS as the operating system underneath. We will, and that enables them to be managed in the same great way as Chromebooks are today. So, so I think that's the key difference there. And also, you'll get a full-fledged sort of browser on the Android tablet, because at the moment the Chrome on an Android phone, you can't run extensions and those kind of things on there. So I think that's another advantage that you can have on a sort of Chrome-based tablet there.
Got it. And then also another question on the ChromeOS tablets. What are the differences going to be between the ChromeOS tablet and the touchscreen flip ChromeOS devices running Android?
The difference is the keyboard. So the flip-based devices will have the keyboard permanently attached. And the tablets won't. The tablets are your normal sort of slate devices, but it depends on it depends on kind of the use cases. We see, for example, that especially for the younger age groups, the size and weight is important, and also then less likely to be using sort of keyboard inputs at that younger age. So we see tablets there. A tablet could be a better form factor. The other use case that sometimes we see is media capture. That some schools will have a cart of devices, so tablets that they use to take photos of science experiments or take videos as they go for study trips. So those kind of sort of use cases where it could be a little bit too heavy to carry around a fully fledged laptop with a convertible keyboard, we see potentially those kind of use cases that we can sort of extend the great Chrome experience to. So.
And then Jason, before we close out here, are there any other kind of insights or thoughts that you'd like to share with the group?
For all the questions, I know we're going into sort of the season, into the pushing season, and for folk who have already gone with Chrome, and also those that are considering. So yeah, please keep us honest. We are sort of always looking at ways of making sure that we try and deliver the best experience for you guys, and welcome all the feedback, and thank you for your time today.
All right. So then before we close it out here, I'll just kind of go through a brief summary here of what, again, we covered. All right, so as we're looking into Chromebooks for this year, as mentioned, it's really about providing more models, a more variety of form factors, making sure that they're more touch enabled, and that the models that we're going to be releasing going forward also support Android on Chromebooks as well. And as we're thinking about devices, making sure that they're including the Stylus, machine learning enhanced, USB for fast charging, rugged form factors for the classroom, but also world-facing camera as well, just to make more of that creative, more of that created content a lot easier to happen as well. And as we mentioned, when it comes to the technology, it's not just about technology for technology's sake, but really ensuring that, excuse me, that it's meeting a variety of various learning principles, from personalized learning to project-based learning, but also to learning that's beyond, that's more beyond just simple knowledge, is something that's very more conceptual. And again, thank you, Jason, for joining the webinar today and providing insights into what your team is working on, and what we can be expecting. Really excited to see what's next. And for those that are on the webinar, again, we'd love to hear your feedback on the content that we presented today, information or where you would like more information on what we've covered. And we've provided the short link here. And as we mentioned earlier, the webinar is also going to be recorded, so we'll make sure to send that over to you as well too. And again, as you can kind of continue to think about the role that Google plays in your district, the role that devices play in your district, would love to hear that feedback, and kind of help us shape how we continue to launch products as well in education. Again, so thank you for joining us today. We'll give you a few more moments back in your day, but please make sure that you fill out the feedback form, and we will follow up with appropriate resources and share out the recorded webinar as well. Thanks for joining.